Chris had just settled into his desk when his director walked over and said, "Chris, can you come to my office?" Nothing about the request seemed unusual. Chris grabbed his notebook and followed him down the hallway, expecting another discussion about projects, deadlines, or upcoming priorities. But the moment he stepped inside, he knew this conversation was different. His director closed the door and sat down quietly. After a brief pause, he said, "Sarah and James have both accepted positions with another organization." Chris froze. They were two of the team's most experienced employees. Losing one would be difficult. Losing both at the same time felt almost impossible to imagine. Before Chris could ask what the plan was, his director continued, "There's one more thing. We're under a hiring freeze, so we won't be replacing them anytime soon." Chris looked down at his notebook. His mind immediately jumped to deadlines, unfinished work, and the pressure the rest of the team would soon be feeling. Then came the sentence he wasn't expecting. His director looked him in the eye and said, "I need you to tell the team this morning." Suddenly, this wasn't just about understanding the situation. Chris had to stand in front of his team, answer difficult questions, manage emotions, and maintain trust, all without much time to prepare. If you were Chris, how would you prepare for that conversation? Most people start thinking about what they're going to say. But experienced leaders prepare differently. They don't just plan their words, they prepare for the entire conversation. That's where a simple framework called the COPE model can make all the difference. COPE is a practical tool for planning difficult conversations before they happen. Instead of reacting in the moment, it helps you think through the situation, anticipate challenges, and communicate with confidence. COPE stands for challenge, objective, problems, and engage. Let's walk through each step using Chris's situation. The first step is challenge. Before saying a single word to the team, Chris needs to ask himself, what is the real challenge? At first, it might seem obvious. 2 employees resigned, but that's only the situation. It's not the real challenge he needs to address. The real challenge is something much bigger. The remaining team is likely worried about heavier workloads, missed deadlines, burnout, and uncertainty about the future. If Chris focuses only on announcing the resignations, he'll miss the concerns that matter most to his team. Great leaders look beyond the event and identify the real issue people are facing. This happens more often than we realize. Imagine an employee suddenly becomes quiet during meetings. The easy conclusion is that they're disengaged. But what if they're overwhelmed? What if they're afraid of making mistakes? Or maybe they're dealing with something difficult outside of work. Great leaders don't stop at the behavior. They look for the challenge underneath it. Once Chris understands the challenge, he moves to the second step, objective. Before speaking to the team, he asks himself another question. What do I want this conversation to accomplish? Every difficult conversation should have a purpose. Without one, it's easy for the discussion to drift or become emotional. Chris realizes his objective isn't to make everyone happy. That's impossible. He can't change the hiring freeze, and he can't replace the employees who left. His goal is much simpler. He wants to explain the situation honestly, answer questions as openly as he can, and leave the team feeling informed rather than uncertain. Notice how that objective changes the conversation. Instead of trying to defend leadership's decision or convince everyone that everything will be fine, Chris focuses on being transparent. When leaders are clear about their objective, they're less likely to become defensive, distracted, or pulled into arguments that don't move the conversation forward. Now Chris moves to the third step of the COPE model, problems. Before meeting with the team, he asks himself, what challenges or reactions should I expect? Experienced leaders know that difficult conversations rarely go exactly as planned. People have questions, they have concerns, and sometimes they have strong emotions. Chris begins writing down the questions he expects to hear. Will he have to take on more work? How long will the hiring freeze last? Is leadership planning more cuts? Does anyone understand how busy we already are? None of these questions should surprise him. In fact, he should expect every one of them. He also thinks about the emotions people might bring into the meeting. Some employees may be frustrated because they're already overwhelmed. Others may feel anxious about job security. A few may even be angry that the organization isn't replacing the vacant positions. Preparing for these reactions helps Chris stay calm when emotions begin to rise. Thinking through possible problems isn't about expecting the worst. It's about being prepared. Chris knows he won't have every answer, and that's okay. If someone asks a question he can't answer, he'll simply say, "That's a good question. I don't know right now, but I'll find out and get back to you." Honest leaders build credibility by admitting what they don't know. Finally, Chris reaches the last step of the COPE model, engage. This is where many difficult conversations succeed or fail. Too many leaders believe communication means delivering information. But communication isn't a speech. It's a conversation. If Chris spends the entire meeting talking, he'll miss the opportunity to understand what his team is really thinking. Instead of rushing through the announcement, Chris plans to pause often. He'll invite questions, listen carefully, and acknowledge people's concerns without becoming defensive. Even if he can't change the situation, he can make sure everyone feels respected, heard, and included in the conversation. That's how trust is built during difficult moments. The meeting begins. Chris takes a deep breath and looks around the room. Instead of rushing through the announcement, he starts by acknowledging that the news may be difficult to hear. He explains that Sarah and James have accepted new positions and that, because of a hiring freeze, those roles won't be filled right away. Then, he pauses. As expected, the questions begin. Will we have more work? How long will the hiring freeze last? Chris stays calm. He listens, answers honestly, and admits when he doesn't know. When one employee says, "It feels like we're doing more with less," Chris doesn't argue. He simply says, "I understand. Your concerns are valid, and I'll make sure leadership hears them." By the end of the meeting, the situation hasn't changed, but the team's perspective has. They leave with clarity because Chris was honest, prepared, and willing to listen. That's the power of the COPE model. The next time you face a difficult conversation, don't just plan what to say. Ask yourself, what's the challenge, objective, problems, and how will I engage? Every leader faces difficult conversations. Great leaders don't avoid them, they prepare for them. If you found this helpful, let me know in the comments. What's the toughest conversation you've had as a leader? And if you want more practical leadership tips you can use right away, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.